Ever get that feeling like everyone's acting different when you're around?
You mean like self-conscious?
Yeah. Like, maybe your friend who's, a total show-off when you go out,
Yeah.
or your coworker who's suddenly, like, employee of the month when the boss is around.
Yeah, interesting.
Well, there's actually a name for that. It's called the observer effect.
Oh yeah. And it's not just some, social quirk or anything. It pops up everywhere. Physics, biology, even psychology.
Okay, I am so ready to deep dive into this. We've got two really interesting articles to pull from for this one. One from Farnham Street
Hmm.
and another from My Motions.
Nice.
They both talk about this idea that, like, just by observing something, you actually change it.
Yeah, exactly. Like reality is way more, I don't know, flexible than we think.
Whoa. Okay, so where do we even start with something this big?
Well, there's a classic example that comes from physics. You probably heard of it. Schrodinger's cat.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of it, but I'm not sure I really understand it.
It's all about quantum mechanics, but don't worry, I'll explain it in a way that makes sense.
Okay, good.
So imagine a cat. It's sealed inside a box,
Okay.
along with like a device. And this device has a 50-50 chance of releasing this, lethal poison.
Oh, poor kitty.
Right. But until we open that box, we have no idea if the cat's alive or dead.
So it's like a coin toss for the cat's life.
Yeah, kinda. The point Schrödinger was making is that until we look inside, until we actually make that observation, the cat exists in this weird state of being both alive and dead at the same time.
Wait, what? How is that even possible?
Well, that's the whole mystery of quantum mechanics, and it's only when we observe it, when we open the box, that the cat's fate is set.
So just by looking, we're basically choosing whether the cat lives or dies.
Exactly, and that's the observer effect in action.
Okay, that's seriously mind-blowing. But it can't just be about cats and boxes, right?
Okay.
Yeah, how does this play out in the real world?
Oh, it's everywhere. Think about animals, for instance. If a biologist is trying to observe, like, monkeys in their natural habitat, the moment those monkeys realize they're being watched, their behavior changes.
Oh, yeah. Like at the zoo, the animals always seem to know you're looking at them.
Exactly. They might get more cautious or more aggressive, who knows? And that makes it really tough for researchers, right?
Yeah, because they're trying to study natural behavior.
Ah,
But just by being there, they're changing it.
exactly. And it's not just animals either. Think about people in a doctor's office.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Or like when you know someone's recording you.
Right. And it's not always like a conscious decision to act differently either.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's just this, I don't know, subconscious reaction to knowing that you're being observed. And that's where this concept of the panopticon prison comes in.
Okay, panopticon. I'm not familiar with that one.
So picture this. You've got a circular prison, cells arranged all around a central watchtower.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
And the idea is that the prisoners, they never know if they're actually being watched, but the possibility is always there, lurking in the back of their minds.
It's like a constant game of am I being watched or not?
Exactly. It's creepy, right? And this panopticon design, it never really caught on in real prisons, but it's this powerful metaphor for modern surveillance. Like, you think about CCTV cameras, social media monitoring,
Good point.
all this data tracking that's happening. It's like this, I don't know, invisible gaze that affects how we behave, even if we don't realize it.
It's like we're all living in a digital panopticon.
You got it.
That's, I don't know, kind of scary when you think about it. So whether it's a conscious choice or just our subconscious reacting, this observer effect is a pretty big deal.
Oh, it is. And get this. It's not just about what we observe, it's how we see things, too.
Okay, now you've got me really curious. Tell me more.
You ever walk into a room and just feel like everyone's staring at you?
Oh my gosh, yes. All the time, especially like right before a big presentation.
Yeah, or maybe you're convinced your boss is watching your every move.
Totally. But is that like just me being paranoid? Or is there something more to it?
Well, it might not be paranoia. Remember how we were saying that, like, just by observing something, you change it?
Yeah?
Well, observation also changes how we perceive things, too.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get it. But can you explain it a little more?
Okay, so think about it like this. We all have these mental shortcuts, right? Biases, assumptions, all that. It's how we make sense of the world.
Okay, yeah.
And these shortcuts, these biases, they can really mess with how we interpret what we see.
So it's like we're seeing the world through our own, like, personalized filter.
Haha, yeah. It's called observer bias, and it's a big deal in research. Like, the Farnham Street article gave this example about researchers testing a new drug.
Okay.
If the researchers know who's getting the real drug and who's getting the placebo, they might unconsciously interpret the results differently.
Oh, interesting.
Like, they might see the group getting the real drug as doing better simply because they expect them to.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like if you're looking for something, you're more likely to find it, even if it's not really there.
Exactly. Our brains are tricky like that. And that's why good research tries to use things like double blinding.
Double blinding.
Yeah. So neither the researchers nor the participants know who's getting what. It helps minimize that bias.
Oh, that's clever. So it's not just about what we're looking at. It's also about, like, the baggage we bring to the observation itself.
You got it. And there's another layer to this too, called the actor-observer bias.
Okay, well, listening.
Basically, is how we tend to explain other people's behavior differently than our own.
Oh, wait, I think I do that all the time. Like, if I'm late for work, it's because of traffic.
Yeah.
But if you're late, it's because you're just a disorganized person.
Uh-huh, exactly. Or like when you see someone posting on social media, having a blast, we might assume they have this perfect life. But when we post something like that, we know it's just a snapshot.
Right.
Oh my gosh, that is so true. So we're all just like judgmental hypocrites.
Well, maybe not hypocrites, but we do have this tendency to judge others more harshly than ourselves. It's because we have more information about our own lives, right?
Yeah, that's true.
We know the context, the motivations, all the stuff that led up to a certain behavior. But for other people, we only see the end result.
So it's like we're missing half the story when we judge others based on just one observation.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to be mindful of this bias.
Yeah.
Before we jump to conclusions about someone, it's worth considering the context, asking questions,
Yeah, good point.
remembering that we might not have the full picture.
This is blowing my mind. I'm starting to see the observer effect everywhere. But what about in those research settings? Like, how do scientists even get accurate data when just being observed changes people's behavior?
Right. That's a great question. The iMotions article talks about some really interesting techniques that researchers use to kind of outsmart the observer effect. Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Tell me all the secret scientist tricks.
Well, one really cool approach is using physiological measures, like biosensors and wearables.
Ooh, fancy. Like those fitness trackers that are so popular these days?
Exactly. Researchers can use those kinds of devices to measure things like heart rate, skin conductivity, even brain activity.
Oh, really? All in real time?
Yep. And it's a way to get objective data about people's reactions and emotions without relying on like self-reporting, which we know can be, influenced by the observer effect.
So it's like sneaking a peek under the hood to see how our bodies are really reacting.
Yeah, I like that. And because these responses are largely involuntary, they're way less likely to be affected by the fact that someone's watching.
So researchers can track our stress levels, our emotions, all that, just by looking at our heart rate or brain waves.
Well, it's not quite that simple, but you get the idea. By analyzing those physiological signals, researchers can learn a lot about how people are really responding to different things.
Wow, this is making me want to volunteer for a research study. But what about studies that can't use fancy gadgets and stuff?
There are other techniques too. For example, there's habituation.
Habituation.
Basically, you just get people used to the lab setting and the observation process.
So like let them hang out in the lab for a while. Get
Yes.
comfortable.
Yeah, exactly. The more familiar they are with everything, the less likely they are to change their behavior. It's like how you stop noticing the hum of your refrigerator after a while.
Right, you just tune it out. So it's all about making the observation less of a big deal.
Exactly. And there are other approaches too, like naturalistic observation, where they make the lab feel more like a real-life setting.
Oh, interesting.
And then there's blinding, where the participants don't know what's being studied.
Okay.
And computer-based testing, which takes the human element out of it entirely.
Wow, so many ways to, like, outsmart the observer effect.
Mhm.
But what does all this mean for us, like regular people? How does this stuff apply to our everyday lives? That's what I was thinking. Like, we've been talking about, cats and boxes and all this fancy research stuff. But how does this observer effect thing actually, show up in our everyday lives?
Well, it's happening all around us, all the time, honestly.
Right.
It shapes how we see the world, how we treat each other, even how we think about ourselves. It's like this, I don't know, hidden force that's always there, influencing everything.
Okay, that's kind of intense. So how can we be more aware of it?
Yeah.
And maybe even, use it to our advantage?
Oh, for sure. The biggest thing is just being mindful of our own biases, those mental filters we talked about.
Right.
Those can really mess with how we see things, especially when we're judging other people.
Like assuming someone's lazy just because they have a messy desk.
Exactly. We do this all the
Yes.
time.
Yeah.
Jump to conclusions without knowing the whole story. So before you judge someone, take a sec to think about, what else might be going on.
Yeah, good advice. It's so easy to just make those snap judgments, but knowing about the observer effect can help us be more, understanding and empathetic.
Totally. And it's not just about understanding others. We can use the observer effect on ourselves, too.
Ooh, how do we do that?
Well, think about it. If just being watched can change how we act, we can use that to our advantage, right?
Okay, yeah. Give me an example.
Like, let's say you're trying to get in shape. You're starting a new workout routine. You could go to the gym with a friend so they can, hold you accountable, or announce your goals on social media where everyone can cheer you on.
Oh, I get it. So that extra layer of, being watched can actually help you stay motivated.
Exactly. It's kind of like hacking your own brain, using the observer effect to keep yourself on track.
I love that. Okay, so I'm starting to see the observer effect everywhere now,
Yeah.
and it's seriously powerful stuff.
It really is. And the more we understand it, the better we can, navigate all the crazy ways that we see the world and each other.
This has been such an awesome deep dive. Thanks for breaking it all down for us.
Happy to do it. It's such an interesting topic.
And for everyone listening out there, I challenge you to pay attention to how this observer effect shows up in your own life this week. You might be surprised by what you find. Until next time, stay curious.